In order to make all these changes, in order to take all these opportunities and convert them to success, you need to have skilled management in a firm. So you need to have high managerial capability. Now the news here is not that good. There have been a number of large studies. One of them is, for example, done recently by, among others, Professor Roy Green at University of Technology, Sydney. And this looks at the relative capabilities of management in a number of different domains. And the outcome is that Australia is clearly second tier. Is not among the top management capability countries. This would not necessarily be a problem if this was an isolated market. It wouldn't be a problem unless other people was going to come here or huge change take place. But since other people are coming here, since your boundary conditions are becoming more difficult with increasing exchange rates and so on, and since you will have to deal with these things, you need very capable management. If you look at the capability around this, just to give you an understanding of how dangerous this is long term, let's have a little systemic look at the relationship between China, India, and Australia. Or let's look at China and Australia, for example. 27%, so a little bit more over a quarter, of Chinese firms have higher management capability than the lower half of Australian firms. So 1/4 of Chinese firms are better managed than half of Australian firms. So let's put that on the side for a minute. China is one of those export-oriented manufacturing economies. But what we have to remember is China grows very rapidly, 9.5% or so. So that means that most of what is produced in China is consumed in China. So only 15%, so 1/7 or so, of everything that's produced in China is actually exported. So we complain about Chinese export in the world, but it's a very tiny fraction of what is produced that's being exported. So we have, and China is large, so we have thousands and thousands of firms. So these 27% firms are very many firms. Let's for a minute imagine that Chinese growth declines a little bit. And it will, at some point, it will slow down. It always does. Then you have all this manufacturing capacity in China pumping out goods for which there is no market any longer in China. Of course, they will go elsewhere. And one of the places they will go to is Australia. So now you will have thousands of firms turning their attention with lots of goods to Australia. 1/4 of these firms from China are going to be better managed than half of the Australian firms. At that point in time, there will be huge gnashing of teeth and huge dying of firms in the Australian marketplace because the managerial capability that is required to meet that challenge in a proactive way already now and a reactive way at that point in time will not be there, and those firms will die. So management capability is critical. Now, how do you get management capability? Well, there are only two ways, and you need to use both. The first way is to get some of the learning that is required. You need language that allows you to talk about things. You're going to do strategy, you need a language that allows you to talk about strategy. If you're going to do operations management, you need a language to talk about operation management. That's normally when you go for a course or something, or a business school or whatever it may be. So there's something around getting the theoretical knowledge, but that's just a small bit of it. The really large bit is to do it in practice. And that means you need to go in training somewhere. And the best training are the large, professionally managed multinational companies. That is where the people in the European manufacturing belt who then start their small companies get their training. The average Swiss manager for an SME is around 40 years old. And he spent 10 years in large multinational before it comes to the SMEs. So he knows everything there is to know about how to run a firm well. In Australia, you have a problem. The problem is you don't have enough multinationals. So you don't have these factories of heavily capable management available at your fingertips. You do have some supply chains where this capability is built. One of them is the automotive supply chain, which actually is one of your key sources of capable management. So in addition to its other aspects, positive and negative, this supply chain is critical for supplying capable management into other parts of the Australian industry. And you need to dramatically up your game in terms of management capability.